As an avid hiker, I've always sought solace in the wilderness. The dense woods, untouched by the cacophony of modern life, called out to me like a siren's song. Little did I know that one fateful hike would become a tale of terror etched into my memory forever. It was a crisp autumn morning when I sat out on the trailhead, armed with my trusty backpack, a water bottle, and a map that had seen better days. The forest greeted me with a chorus of rustling leaves and the distant call of birds. The trees were painted in shades of red and gold, their branches swaying in a gentle breeze. I took in the beauty of it all, and my heart was filled with the promise of adventure. The trail was marked, albeit faintly, and I followed it with a sense of purpose. Hours passed, and the sun dipped below the horizon, casting eerie shadows across the forest floor. I knew I had to find a suitable place to set up camp for the night. The forest grew darker, and I felt the weight of solitude pressing upon me. But I pressed on, determined to make the best of this expedition. As night fell, I discovered a small clearing, nestled between the trees like a secret sanctuary. It seemed like the perfect spot to pitch my tent and rest for the night. I gathered some firewood and lit a small campfire, its warm glow warding off the encroaching darkness. The crackling of the fire was oddly comforting, a reminder that I was not entirely alone in this wilderness. I settled into my sleeping bag, listening to the sounds of the night. Owls hooted in the distance, and the wind whispered through the leaves. Despite the eerie ambience, I felt a strange sense of peace, as though the forest was sharing its secrets with me. But then, the tranquility was shattered by a noise that sent a chill down my spine. It was a low, guttural growl, unlike anything I had ever heard in the woods. My heart started racing, and I strained to listen. And there it was again, but it was closer this time. It sounded almost human, but there was something deeply unsettling about it. I unzipped my tent and cautiously peered outside. My flashlight was trembling in my hand. The beam of light revealed nothing but the trees and underbrush. I convinced myself it was just an animal, perhaps a bear or a coyote, but still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I returned to my tent, but sleep eluded me. The forest was alive with strange noises, twigs snapping, branches rustling, and that unnerving growl growing louder. Panic clawed at the edges of my mind. I knew I had to leave, to abandon my camp and find safety. With my trembling hands, I packed up my gear and extinguished the fire, leaving only the faintest glow of embers. I followed the trail in the dark, with the help of my flashlight's beam cutting through the inky blackness. The growling persisted, getting more closer now, and accompanied by the sound of heavy, labored breathing. It was as though something was stalking me, following my every move. My heart pounded in my chest as I quickened my pace. I couldn't see what was pursuing me, but I could sense its malevolence. My mind raced, searching for an escape, a way out of this nightmare. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a dilapidated cabin hidden deep within the woods. Desperation drove me to it, and I threw open the creaking door, hoping to seek refuge. The cabin was as eerie as the forest itself, with dust-covered furniture and faded photographs adorning the walls. It was clear that no one had lived here for years. I barricaded myself inside, hoping that whatever was out there couldn't get in. The growling and breathing grew louder, and I heard something scratching at the door. Panic had gripped me as I realized I might not make it out of this alive. The night felt endless, the sounds of the forest merging with the haunting noises outside the cabin. With the first light of dawn, the growling finally ceased, and the breathing retreated into the woods. I cautiously ventured outside. I could feel my legs trembling and my heart still pounding fast. I knew I had to get out of the forest, to put this nightmare behind me. As I walked away from the cabin and the ominous memories it held, I couldn't help but wonder what had lurked in those woods that night. I may never have the answers, but I do know one thing: I'll never look at a hike in the woods the same way again. The mountains always held a certain mystique for me, beckoning with their jagged peaks and whispering secrets through the rustling pines. So, when my friends proposed a camping trip deep in the heart of the rugged Appalachian Mountains, I eagerly agreed. Little did I know that this trip would become a haunting tale that still sends shivers down my spine. We arrived at the trailhead early in the morning, the scent of damp earth and pine needles filling the air. Our group consisted of 5 friends. Armed with backpacks filled with supplies, we began our ascent into the wilderness. The first day had passed without any incident. We hiked along the narrow, winding trails, reveling in the breathtaking beauty of nature. The sunlight filtered through the dense canopy, casting a dappled glow on the forest floor. As evening approached, we set up camp by a serene mountain stream. The gurgling water lulled us into a peaceful slumber, and for a while, it seemed like a perfect getaway. But on the second day, as we continued deeper into the mountains, an unsettling feeling settled in my chest. The once inviting forest now started to feel oppressive, as if the very trees were watching our every move. Sarah and Lisa mentioned they'd felt it too, but we brushed it off as simple nerves. That night, things took a darker turn. A relentless storm rolled in, the thunderous crashes echoing through the valleys. Our campfire struggled to stay alive, casting eerie shadows that danced and twisted like malevolent spirits. The wind howled through the trees, and I swear I heard whispers carried by the gusts, unintelligible but undeniably sinister. Dave laughed off our fear. "It's just the wilderness playing tricks on your minds," he said, attempting to reassure us. But even he couldn't deny the unease that hung heavy in the air. The third day brought a thick fog that clung to the mountainside, reducing visibility to a few feet. We trudged on, following the trail markers with a growing sense of trepidation. As we ventured deeper into the fog, we began to lose our way. Panic started to creep in, gnawing our resolve. Hours had passed, and exhaustion weighed us down. The trail seemed to twist and turn in unnatural ways, leading us in circles. I checked my GPS, but it malfunctioned, displaying only a blank screen. The realization that we were truly lost settled in like a cold, heavy stone in my stomach. Nightfall descended upon us, and the fog grew thicker. We decided to set up camp in a small clearing, surrounded by impenetrable mist. The tension among us was palpable. We huddled around our flickering campfire, its feeble light barely penetrating the oppressive darkness. Then, I heard. The whispers returned. Soft, ethereal voices seemed to drift through the fog, just beyond our reach. They were impossible to decipher, like a chorus of the damned. Panic seized hold of us, and we clung to each other, trembling with fear. As the night wore on, the whispers grew louder and more insistent. They called to us by name, their words twisted into haunting, mournful pleas. Lisa was the first to break. She screamed, leaping to her feet and running blindly into the fog, her voice fading into the distance. We tried to chase after her, but the fog swallowed her whole. We were left with a chilling silence, broken only by the occasional sob or whimper. We knew we couldn't leave her out there alone, but we also knew that venturing further into the fog was a gamble with our lives. Morning brought no relief. Lisa was still missing, and our supplies were dwindling. The fog showed no sign of lifting, and the whispers continued their torment. We were trapped in a nightmarish purgatory, our only hope of escape lying deeper into the mountains. We made a grim decision to press on, driven by desperation and the need to find our friend. The fog clung to us like a shroud, the whispers growing more malevolent with every step. The trail seemed to lead us into increasingly treacherous terrain, and the mountains themselves seemed to conspire against us. Days turned into weeks, and our group dwindled. Mike vanished one night, and then Dave. The whispers haunted our dreams, their words becoming clearer, more sinister. They promised unimaginable horrors, a fate worse than death. I was the last one left, and I knew I couldn't endure this torment any longer. One fateful night, as I lay shivering in my tent, the whispers closed in on me. It was then that I understood the true horror of the mountains, the ancient malevolence that dwelled within their depths. I fled into the fog, driven mad by the relentless whispers. And now, as I sit alone in this forsaken wilderness, I realize that I am no longer alone. The mountains themselves are watching me, their jagged peaks like the teeth of a malevolent beast. The whispers have become my constant companions, and I know that I am trapped here for all eternity, a prisoner of the mountains. Hiking had always been my escape from the monotony of everyday life, but on this particular adventure, the thrill would take on a whole new meaning. The sun was setting as I ventured into the forest. An unsettling air of unease was already settling in. The trail was winding, its paths were narrow and overgrown. The crunch of leaves underfoot and the fading light gave the woods an eerie quality, like a portal to another world. I had heard tales of a hidden waterfall deep within these woods, a secret paradise that few had ever laid eyes upon. Armed with a vague map and a sense of adventure, I plunged deeper into the heart of the forest, guided by nothing but intuition and the faint sound of rushing water. Hours passed, and the darkness crept in swiftly. The canopy of trees blocked out the last vestiges of daylight, plunging me into an inky blackness. My flashlight cast eerie shadows on the gnarled tree trunks as I pressed on. I could hear the distant whispers of the waterfall, a siren's call that refused to be ignored. Suddenly, the trail disappeared, swallowed by a thicket of brambles and underbrush. And panic threatened me to take hold, but I was determined to find the waterfall. Pushing my way through the dense foliage, I stumbled upon a hidden clearing. The moonlight illuminated a mesmerizing sight, the cascading waterfall, shimmering like liquid silver, and a pool of crystal-clear water below. The moment was enchanting, but my excitement was short-lived. As I gazed at the waterfall, I heard something, a guttural growl that seemed to emanate from the very depths of the forest. My heart started pounding, and I scanned the shadows. My flashlight was trembling in my hand. There, lurking in the underbrush, I saw something, a pair of glowing yellow eyes, cold and malevolent. Whatever it was massive and hidden in the darkness. The growling grew louder, echoing in the night like a harbinger of doom. I was not alone in this remote wilderness. Fear coursed through my veins as I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes locked with those sinister orbs. But my retreat only seemed to provoke it. The creature stepped into the moonlight, revealing a monstrous silhouette. It was no ordinary beast. It was a massive wolf, its fur matted and its eyes filled with hunger. The wolf's growls grew more menacing, and I knew I had to act fast. Desperation fueled my instincts as I reached for a nearby branch, my makeshift weapon against this monstrous predator. The beast lunged, teeth bared, and I swung the branch with all my might. The blow connected, sending the wolf yelping and retreating into the darkness. It was wounded but far from defeated. I knew I had to make my escape while I still could. I stumbled back to the trail, every step echoing with the memory of that sinister encounter. As I sprinted through the forest, the wolf's growls faded into the distance, and I dared not look back. My heart raced, my breath came in ragged gasps, and the forest seemed to close in around me. I didn't know how far I had gone or if I was still on the right path. Panic threatened to consume me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I emerged from the forest. My legs were trembling with exhaustion and terror. The moon hung high in the sky, casting its ethereal glow over the world. I had survived the encounter. As I made my way back to civilization, the thrill of adventure had taken me to the edge of terror, and I had come back forever changed, haunted by the memory of those glowing yellow eyes in the night. As I stared out the cabin window, the moonlight painted the snow-covered mountains in an eerie, silvery glow. My friends, Mike and Jason, had insisted on this trip deep into the remote wilderness of the Rockies. They were seasoned hunters, but I was a city boy, and this was my first real hunting expedition. I had reluctantly agreed, eager to prove my worth to them, but the isolation and the darkness of the mountains had started to play tricks on my mind. Earlier in the day, we had spotted a large buck grazing on the ridge, and its magnificent antlers had triggered a fierce desire within us. It had disappeared into the woods before we could get a clear shot, so we decided to track it down, no matter at what cost. As the fire crackled and the wind howled outside, we planned our strategy. Jason was the most experienced among us, so he took the lead, while Mike and I followed closely behind. The snow crunched beneath our boots as we ventured deeper into the woods, each step taking us further from the safety of our cabin. Hours passed, and the temperature continued to drop. The forest was dense, and the trees seemed to lean in closer with every step we took. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, and I knew it wasn't just by the elusive buck we were chasing. Finally, Jason signaled for us to stop. He crouched down and examined some tracks in the snow. He whispered, "Fresh deer tracks. We're getting closer." I shivered, not just from the cold, but from the overwhelming sense of foreboding that had settled over me. The moon was hidden behind a thick veil of clouds, plunging us into darkness, with only our flashlights to pierce the black. We followed the tracks deeper into the forest, the air becoming heavier with every step. Suddenly, Jason stopped again and raised his hand, signaling us for silence. He pointed his flashlight at a distant clearing. And there it was, the majestic buck we had been chasing. Its antlers gleamed in the weak beam of light. We carefully took aim, but just as I was about to pull the trigger, something strange happened. The buck turned to face us, and its eyes glowed with an unnatural, piercing red light. Fear gripped my heart as I realized that this was no ordinary deer. In a blink, the buck vanished into the darkness, leaving us standing there in stunned silence. "Did you see that?" I whispered. My voice was trembling. Mike and Jason were as shaken as I was, but they didn't say a word. We decided to follow the tracks again, hoping to find the deer once more. But as we ventured further into the woods, the forest seemed to close in around us, and the oppressive silence was broken only by the occasional rustling of leaves. Hours passed, and the temperature dropped to a bone-chilling degree. The sense of being watched intensified, and a creeping dread settled over me. Suddenly, Mike gasped and pointed his flashlight at something in the distance. There it was, standing amidst the trees, was the same buck once more. Its red eyes was fixed on us once again. But this time, it was not alone. A circle of otherworldly, shadowy figures surrounded it, their eyes burning with the same crimson light. Panic surged through me as I realized that we were not hunting the buck, but it was hunting us. Without saying a word, we turned and ran as fast as we could, crashing through the underbrush, ignoring the scratches and cuts that tore our skin. The forest seemed to come alive with malevolent energy, the trees whispering in a language I couldn't understand. Eventually, we burst out of the woods and stumbled back to the cabin, gasping for breath. The sense of being watched finally lifted, and the oppressive darkness of the mountains gave way to the comforting light of the cabin's fire. We never spoke of that night again, and our hunting trip was cut short as we packed our bags and left the mountains behind. To this day, I can't explain what happened in those woods, but one thing is for certain, there are things out there in the mountains that are better left undiscovered, and some hunts are better off abandoned.